Well, ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump was finally asked if he's concerned about Canada being very blue. And this is something that I've said the media, they need to ask this. They finally take my advice because it doesn't make any sense for Donald Trump to really want to annex all of Canada when we know they're very liberal. And if they got like 55 electoral votes, if it's just the entire state, that's what he's been saying. He's saying the 51st state is all of Canada. It's a population comparable to California. That's over 50 electoral votes. That is a guaranteed blue state. And nobody was asking anything about it. And I was like, well, I think maybe Trump is still trolling. Maybe it's just leverage for the trade renegotiation. Let's see what Trump has to say about this because they actually asked it.
I want to follow up on Canada, and I don't think I've heard you say this in all of the talk about Canada becoming the 51st state. Are you concerned that if they became the 51st state, they would be a very, very blue state? Very, very big and very, very blue.
No, there might be, but it would, you have that artificial line that goes, that straight artificial, that looked like it was drawn by a ruler. Somebody with I don't mean a ruler like a king, I mean like a ruler, this way. And it's just an artificial line that was drawn in the sand or in the ice. And can I tell you, Peter, just you add that to this country, what a beautiful landmass, the most beautiful landmass anywhere in the world, and it was just cut off for whatever reason. It would be great. Now, is it liberal? Maybe, but a conservative until I got involved, because I don't care who wins up there. I frankly probably would do better with the liberal than the conservative, if you want to know the truth. But just a little while ago, before I got involved and totally changed the election, which I don't care about, probably it's to our advantage actually, but the conservative was leading against, I call him Governor Trudeau, the conservative was leading by 35 points. So, so I don't know about that. I think Canada is a place like a lot of other places. If you have a good candidate, the candidate's going to win.
Yeah, so he's talking about Pierre Poilievre leading against originally, Trudeau. Trudeau steps down, and now it's Carney. But Trump has to realize, and listen, this has got to be some type of troll, because we know that when you look at the United States versus Canada, their version of conservatism is a little bit different than the United States. For example, even with the Conservative Party leading all of the polls last year, at that point it was like, if you look at the odds, it was like 90% to 10% in terms of the Conservative Party winning in 2025. Even with that, they did a straw poll on the election, Trump versus Kamala. Kamala was at 65%, Trump was at 21%. And then the rest was like undecided or didn't want to answer. So that just goes to show you there's a huge difference. Now, are they getting a little bit more conservative? Maybe. They've had so many failed liberal governments. It's taken them a while, and they still might vote for another liberal, which I do agree with Trump. It would benefit the United States more if a liberal was in office than a conservative, just in terms of the trade situation, the fact that liberals tend to value partnerships over their own country. And we know that the conservative, their party's been saying, well, they don't like Trump. They don't like what he's doing. It's more of a galvanized nationalist approach, because that's what you'll get with more conservative leaning people rather than the liberal government there. So he is right on that front. But, this answer is just not going to suffice. It's just not true. There's no way they would be conservative just because they might go conservative this election. Again, it's a lot different when you talk about the Conservative Party and how far right or not right they are. You could maybe argue they're moderate right versus the Conservative Party in the United States, which is a lot more right, which would, and look, maybe something could happen to where if Trump was, I don't know if Trump would become, a lot of Canadians hate Trump, but maybe if he gave them great deals, they keep their universal health care, they do a 1-for-1 exchange rate, they're getting more money in their pockets, they're getting a way better tax rate. Maybe that could turn some of those people right-wing, but it seems unlikely. Another thing I heard, and this was just announced, the Canadian election has been called by the Liberal Party, and I believe it's happening April 20th. Was that right? April 20th or April 20th? I think it's April 20th. And people are saying, well, now because they're leading in Polymarket in some of the polls, that's why they're having the election right now. Is that true? Honestly, probably. It's probably not a coincidence. Now that they have momentum, they want to capitalize on it. I don't know if the liberals are going to win. Again, for the United States, it probably would be better for the liberals to win in some twisted way. Although you would like North America, especially the country to our north, to be more conservative with more conservative values. But just in general, that's why we've been talking about. And you would think the question would be, have you ever thought about just taking Alberta and Saskatchewan and then maybe taking all of Western Canada because most of it's liberal? That's what they should have asked him as well. But his answer was, well, a conservative was leading. Yeah, but that's not the same thing. A conservative in Canada is a lot different than a conservative in the United States. We know this. And so that's kind of the new disconnect with Trump. But listen, this has got to be some type of troll, I think, to where it's just a renegotiation of the trade deal, or it's a situation to where we're looking at singular provinces to take on, and it would fall like dominoes, maybe with Alberta and Saskatchewan, and then maybe also Manitoba, if it came to that. But it would not be all of Canada. I think this is more so leverage. We want to cripple you in terms of your economy. We want to put pressure on you so you come to the negotiating table. And they've already said they want to do a renegotiated deal. I don't know if that's going to be happening. Carney says now he doesn't want to do an in-person Oval Office meeting with Trump. That would be something to see. But now he doesn't want to do that. He's a total clown. If you've seen interviews of him, he looks completely out of his depth. He does not look like a prime minister at all. But that's who they have right now, and technically he is now the slight favorite over Paul Vier to win, and he is obviously the Liberal Party. So I understand what Trump is saying, and then he talks about the imaginary line that was put into place to separate the United States from Canada. I understand. Maybe you think it's weird that that's there, but listen, the point of it is it's a big problem because under what Trump is currently saying, and again, I think it's a troll. I mean, that's what I believe at this point because it just doesn't. You're giving liberals 55 more electoral votes, and you're giving them way more representation. We also have this clip of Trump reiterating when he says Canada should be a state, he really means it.
Nobody knows that. Nobody knows that. They have up to 400%. They have a couple of tariffs at 400%. Nobody knows that. Nobody talks about that. And remember, with Canada, we don't need their cars. We don't need their lumber. We don't need their energy. We don't need anything from Canada. And yet it costs us $200 billion a year in subsidy to keep Canada afloat. So when I say they should be a state, I mean that. I really mean that. Because we can't be expected to carry a country that is right next to us on our border. It would be a great state. It would be a cherished state.
Well, Trump is definitely angling for, if there is a renegotiation of the trade deal like Canada probably wants, Trump is angling for the tariffs to be removed because Canada has some pretty crazy tariffs on dairy, and Trump wants them gone. That's what he's angling for, because we don't know. Maybe it is still taking the state, but it does seem like, well, if the Liberals win this upcoming election in April, then maybe you get Alberta, maybe you get Saskatchewan angry to the point to where they say, we're done with it. We're done with this Liberal leadership. It's been terrible. The Liberal Party had a 20% approval rating, then they win again. And you look at the GDP growth and how stagnant it is in Canada, it's disturbing compared to some of the other Western countries. Real disturbing. Not to mention what's happened to Toronto and some of the other big cities, what they've been turned into with all the immigration. And you're going to elect Liberals again. And we know Western Canada is getting screwed to where they have to pay Eastern Canada a certain amount of money via the Equalization Act. So this is all key stuff. So that's why we would say, well, maybe it's Alberta, maybe it's Saskatchewan if the Liberals win. But Trump here, he's putting the pressure on them. Trump doesn't really want all of Canada. He's saying this because this is what happens in negotiations when you renegotiate things. And it's pushing the Canadians into a corner, and now they're going to be forced to renegotiate, and all of the tariffs are going to come off on dairy, and we're going to get better deals, and we're going to get more minerals. Or we potentially approach Trump and say we're looking at maybe just provinces. Some of these provinces we can't take. They're just too liberal. It's not going to work. These provinces, unless they became a territory, which I said, because originally people were arguing, well, this was before Trump came out and said, no, they're going to be a state if we do it. people were like, well, why don't we just make them a territory? But then that's one step closer. But even the idea of adding Western Canada, I think, is scary to a degree, because imagine a Liberal gets into office and you have Eastern Canada. At that point, it would be a lot more unstable, especially with Quebec and their previous history trying to become independent on their own. Imagine if they did. Then you've got a totally unstable Eastern Canada, and there becomes this liberal movement to merge Eastern Canada with Western Canada, which at that point would be annexed by the United States and the United States, which is what we wouldn't want. What we don't want is, we do not want these liberal Canadians. I'll take on British Columbia if it means we're going to get the other three in Western Canada, and because British Columbia is liberal, but I'll take it on. We'll deal with it. But we can't take on Eastern Canada with how liberal it is. We just can't do it. And so I think that's what Trump has to understand. And then he says, well, the conservative was leading. Yeah, but that was after like so many years of failed liberal leadership, to the point where their GDP was suffering significantly, and they were dealing with terrible crime and just terrible immigration. So they finally said enough is enough. But now, even with this, it looks like the Liberal Party is going to win again. They're very left wing. Kamala against Trump, it was a straw poll. It was 65-21. Even with the conservative possibly winning, because the conservative is a lot more moderate, their party. Those are very left-wing people. It'd be very hard. And look, maybe, you don't know, maybe they'll have a change if the Republicans give them a great deal and their lives get better and they become more conservative. I don't know if that's what Trump is hoping for. That's something that we're not in the business to say that that's going to happen. It's too big of a risk, I would say, to add them as a state. There's just no doubt about it. And I think it might even be too big of a risk to add Western Canada, because then the eastern side becomes unstable, and then when a Liberal gets into office, they're going to want the eastern side for votes and say, we need this, and so it becomes this huge big issue. So that's why I don't even think Trump wants Canada. I think it's all renegotiation. We're going to get a great deal. What we do want is we would want to buy the three territories: Northwest Territories, Yukon, Nunavut, because we need the Arctic control. We need control of the Northwest Passage, and we also have Alaska up there. So I said even before that, we're going to leave all the territories maybe in southern Canada alone, well, the provinces, I mean. But the territories is what Trump should be going after. Very small population, very similar to Greenland, very similar. Maybe there's a deal we can do with Canada to where we can stop. You got to stop tariffing us. We're going to stop tariffing you. Remember, Trump's already said, he's talked about this. April 2nd is the day where all the reciprocal tariffs are going on. That's on the EU. That's on Canada. That's on all the countries that are tariffing us. But the deal could be, all right, we're both going to stop our tariffs. We don't want to get hit with 270% tariffs on dairy. Please stop. We're going to stop with our tariffs. Your economy is really suffering. We want to do good trade. We want your lumber for cheaper. We want more access to rare earths. And we will be buying the three northern provinces off of you, because we have Alaska, and we want full control of the Arctic above North America and above the Atlantic Ocean. And we also have some control above the Pacific Ocean because of Alaska. So think about it. That might be what Trump is angling for. Trump is trolling here. He doesn't mean this. Trust me, this is understandable what Trump is doing. This is why Trump is such a great president for us, and he's really standing up for us. And so we have to understand, he's just doing this to give us a better position, trade renegotiation. We realize that adding all of Canada, and his advisors, I'm sure, have told him it's not advantageous. Yes, if we could handpick Alberta and Saskatchewan, it would be ideal. But then it opens the door of all the other provinces joining. And we're going to say, we don't want the other provinces. Well, you know what? We'll take British Columbia and Manitoba. But we don't want the other provinces. But you can't just do that. I mean, technically you can. But it becomes more unstable on the eastern side of Canada, and then they say, hey, we want to join as well, and then liberals get in, and then they get them in, and it's just a liberal cesspool with these people. We're not interested in bringing these, how liberal these people are. I mean, this is the EU, basically. They want to join the EU. They're obsessed with the EU. Carney is, like, the guy's like, like, he can't even talk. I mean, they installed this guy, he's like, he can't articulate anything. Like, watch Carney give an interview. It's like, I mean, it's bad. And they're going to vote for that? Really? I mean, it's better for us if they do. In a perfect world, we take the 3 territories and we take all of Western Canada, including British Columbia, because I don't want British Columbia isolated, and we would gain more Republican voters than Liberal voters, even with British Columbia. And by the way, that's only 15% of the state, or of the country, Western Canada. Or it might be a little bit more. If you add British Columbia, it might be a little bit more, maybe 20%. But that's only 20%. So, I mean, if the entire country is the size of California and we're only taking 20%, and most of them are conservative, and we're getting all of that resource potential, and we're getting full control of the Arctic, yeah, that would be an amazing thing. But it leads to potentially Eastern Canada also being annexed down the line. That's where it becomes a problem. But maybe at that point it changes so much, the country is so much more conservative, it might not matter. We don't know. But I think this is more so just Trump understanding we have so much leverage in this trade renegotiation and squeezing Canada, and also maybe trying to get the Liberal elected. Because Trump started saying this, and then Liberals like, ha, look at what Trump did. He ruined the conservative chance. Well, yeah, it's actually good for Trump that he did that. It's better to deal with a Liberal in Canada than a conservative that's more based on, this Canada first policy. We don't want that. We want you to be based on America, or at least spread the wealth. We're not going to spread the wealth, but we want you to. That's how dumb liberalism is. And that's exactly what Carney and the leadership would do there in Canada if he got elected. So yeah, no, we want the Liberals to win. So keep saying this and tank the conservatives in Canada. We want the Liberals in office. Maybe that's what Trump is doing as well. Because when he says, oh, maybe I should want the Liberal to win, yeah, he should. But to me, I mean, with where Canada is, it might not be a crazy difference, conservative versus liberal. But this is just the update. So Trump is saying, yes, I'm for real. Yes, I want all of Canada. You have to read between the lines on it. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.